So here's the net profit position, which is basically gross profit, take off the interest charges, which is in your site appraisals. And so this is, again, a classic example where a lot of the developers are making significant amounts of profit over and above what we expect. We're in a period now of a bit of a change where, again, the market is now stabilizing. Output is expected to rise in 2024-25. Profits are rising, as reported by Taylor Wimpey and Persimmon and Barclays. Outputs, they're recognizing, are down, but again, they're controlling their markets as much as they can by changing the housing mix. Again, contesting viability as many times as you can. And as a result, we've got a lot of development, which is taking a long time to get through to a point where they're on the site, mainly because viability is being contested. I don't know if you've seen, there is a CMA report produced by the government agencies, which is basically investigating how the house builders perform. And the house builders have responded by saying, it's the planning system, mate. It's the planners that are causing the problems. And those reports are very, very powerful, particularly if they're being read by government, saying, well, we've got to do something about the planning system. And I'm sure that you've seen how maybe other political parties view the planning system. But again, it's a matter of how you deal with that, particularly in terms of land supply, in terms of output, and in terms of actually delivering place-making developments, which include affordable housing and all the sort of developer contributions that you would expect. I'm really talking about things like the impact of development on the provision and capacity of schools locally. I'm thinking about the provision and capacity of the services delivered by the clinical commissioning groups, the doctors' surgeries locally. I'm talking about active travel mechanisms. I'm talking about on-site or off-site public open space. I'm talking about sport and recreation requirements emerging from the need to provide all those things which make a place work. So there's a whole range of what we call local infrastructure that can and should be developed alongside the new housing so that these places do work and do not impose adverse costs on others who are already being served by that local infrastructure. So you can't just build houses and flats without providing all the other local infrastructure to make a place work properly. And there are metrics, procedures, and documents that each local authority can and should use. They're produced at a national level and available and to be interpreted locally. And I've written lots of these documents, and therefore, in that sense, I know their content. So we want good library provision. We need good museum provision. We need archive provision. We need arts provision. We need a whole range of stuff that comes alongside the housing, and that must be carried by the costs of that must be carried by the developer as a legitimate cost alongside the costs of building out the housing. And therefore, in that sense, that's going to affect the land values, the budget you have in your calculation to pay for land. Now, if you know in advance that you have to carry those costs, then of course, it's not a problem. It's where you do not include them, or you ignore them, or you say you cannot afford to pay for them, that's where the big issues arise. And of course, if there is a need arising from development and it's not met, then the planning authority has every right to refuse planning permission. And that's really quite an important thing, and maybe go to appeal. It's a difficult situation and it slows the whole process down. But again, one would expect that the local plan is written in such a way that it's very clear what it wants. The policies in the plan are there because there's a need, and the policies do not render development unviable. Otherwise, those policies should not be in the plan. So it's really very important that the local planning authority understands its role. It can only seek developer contributions when there's a need arising, and has a legal duty to seek those if there is a need. So they need to understand the local capacity requirements in the local area, and so on. So it's not just a thing of just running the spreadsheet. It's actually how the spreadsheet reflects the issues that are set out in the local plan. And each of your local plans will have different things that they want to achieve. And that is quite expected. It's not unusual. But what you've got to do is to actually say, well, how does that then affect the viability? Is it known that they have to deliver these things? Has it been accepted that there is a need arising? I know, for instance, talking to Charles with respect to Brighton, that one of the things that come up is that there are plenty of school places in and around Brighton, and therefore the scheme that's being proposed in the gasworks site there, the developer said, well, there's no need to actually provide school provision. And the local planning authority, as an education authority, have said, yeah, we agree with that. Now, I would just want to know what the numbers look like and so on, and do the calculations. The Department for Education, and the government department, have a clear metric that local planning authorities can and should follow. Okay, and each local authority, each planning authority, will have its own metric. So you can download the dashboard from the Department for Education and put in your local authority, and you can then work out the need arising from a development. It's really quite simple. As long as the planning authority knows that exists, the education authority of the authority should know the metric exists. Remember, the education authority is different from the planning authority. The education authority has to work with and through the planning authority if they want to seek and secure provision. So we need to understand whether, in fact, what is the state of play in primary and secondary schools, and in sixth form colleges, and in special needs schooling locally, and where a development is taking place. I would think axiomatically that if we're talking of schemes of 1, 2, 3,000 units over 10 years, I can't understand why there won't be a need for additional community infrastructure. It beggars belief that you're going to be adding maybe 10, 15,000 people into a local area, and that these things don't affect local infrastructure. It just doesn't, it's presumptuous if in fact you think it doesn't.